Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, and welcome on into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. I'm Kaylee Nix here this morning with our host and writer of the Stockout community, Mike Baudendistel. Mike, how are you doing on this Monday?
Doing well. It's supposed to be about 106 today, so probably spend most of the afternoon inside.
Yeah, it's a little toasty down there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's supposed to be lows in the 50s here in Chattanooga this week, so I'll try and send some of that cool energy your way.
Sounds good.
Yeah, my parents live out there, and they would absolutely appreciate it as well. Let's go ahead and dive into our topic this morning. This is, of course, the segment where we update you on the upcoming Stockout show, which will be here in just about 30 minutes. And today you are taking a pretty deep dive into the freight market. So you've got Thomas Wasson, our host and writer of our Loaded and Rolling community, joining you on the show. What are you guys going to cover?
Yeah, so the idea was to have Thomas on, do a crossover episode, and interview him from the perspective of the shipper, the stockout targets, CPG companies, retail companies. So I'm going to ask Thomas the questions I would ask if I was in that role as a shipper. And those are things like, how should a shipper be positioning themselves given where we are in the freight market? Might see some improvement sort of later this year. I'm strengthening the freight market later this year into next year. Sort of how do you, defend against, that, how should they be thinking about, putting freight in the spot market, which is still really depressed, sort of balancing that out with maybe something that's more stable in the contract market or even a dedicated market, sort of all those things, how a shipper should use brokers effectively, when should they even consider a private fleet, within their private fleet, when should they consider alternative fuels, so sort of all those things. Really think there's a lot to go into.
Yeah, I feel like CPG shippers have really probably had a very difficult time during this depressed freight market, simply because it's not like their goods ever really go out of demand, right? They're shipping things that people are regularly buying, albeit probably at a higher price point, but they don't really have an option to just say, hey, we're not sending out this shipment because we just simply can't afford to right now. What are some of those biggest hurdles that they've really had to deal with throughout the last kind of 2.5 years? And have they found any maybe creative solutions to work around it until the point now where we're starting to see this market turn?
Yeah, so the CPG companies have had to deal with a lot of inflation in certain ingredients. And so it's kind of one open question of, I saw that, Kamala Harris is rolling out or plan to fight inflation in groceries and price gouging. It'll be interesting to see how they end up defining that. But a lot of the CPG price increases have been from difficult growing conditions in certain regions. And so a lot of those costs have been passed on. And so the CPG companies have had to increase prices quite a lot in order to sort of get their margins back to where they were, before the pandemic levels. A lot of the customers have finally started to change their behavior. For a long time, they were sort of accepting those higher prices. Now they're starting to change their behavior, going down to lower priced items. And so the CPG companies are having to deal with that. And I guess some of the creative solutions. I think one of the biggest ones is they've really cut the number of SKUs. The number of SKUs is really down across the board. So they focused on those stocking units that turn quicker. So there's not as much in inventory. So that's been a big thing they've done.
The other part of that, too, as you mentioned, is kind of that inventory management process, which was very difficult because CPG companies were one of those spaces that were hit very hard by like sudden need and then no need during the pandemic, right? We saw, of course, if we think about it, the run up on toilet paper is the one that everybody continuously kind of brings up as an example. Have they had to get creative as well with inventory management solutions? And again, I talked with Mary O'Connell about this last week, finding that very delicate balance between a just-in-time versus just-in-case kind of idea.
Yeah, the pandemic really put the CPG companies in a situation they have not been in before, because really, historically, they had not had a lot of issues with supply chain. Sort of everything sort of worked well. Sort of trucks showed up on time. They're used to not having shortages of things. And then during the pandemic, there was always some problem. Like Kraft Heinz at one point said, every single day there's some ingredient we don't have, or some piece of packaging material they don't have. So they have gotten, I think, maybe built in a little bit more buffer there. The supply chain issues are something where the C-suite says we don't want to go through that again. So I do think there's a little bit more of a just in case. I also think there's more collaboration now between the CPG companies and the retailers. Like, Walmart is sharing more of its information on just its products, how quickly they're turning with the CPG companies themselves. There's certain tiers of service where they can even share with them really high-end analytics, so the CPG companies know even more to know which products to focus on. So there has been more collaboration in that way as well.
So you mentioned, of course, this is all a conversation about the trucking space, as Thomas Wasson is our enterprise fleet expert. But are you guys planning on breaking anything down when it comes to the intermodal space as well?
Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to let him get by speaking with me without saying something about intermodal. I think the big sort of maybe controversy or difference of opinion has just been how much you can save using intermodal at the moment. I mean, a lot of the companies I talk to say, well, it still sort of makes sense if you're moving long haul from LA to Atlanta or LA to Chicago or something like that. But on the East Coast, let's say Chicago to points eastward, it's just the truckload market is too depressed that it's almost cheaper to send it via truck. Hub Group the other day on their earnings call disputed that and said it's still a 20% difference. So I'm interested to see what Thomas thinks from the people he's spoken to.
Well, and of course, we will hear that coming up from him in just about 20-ish minutes or so. For people who want to catch the show or who want to sign up for the newsletter and also be a part of that community space, where can they go to do that, and when can they expect that newsletter in their inbox?
Yeah, so the show should be live on the site, and it'll be available on YouTube as well. We have a YouTube channel, and then the newsletter can just be found FreightWaves.com up at the top under newsletters. It'll be the first one there under supply chain.
All right, Mike, thanks for joining us this morning.
Midweek, let's say.
There we go. Thanks for joining us this morning for the update. We will catch you and Thomas on the show in just about 20 minutes.
Okay, good to see you.